We all have these conversations in our heads. Unfortunately, a lot of the conversations and questions are negative.
It's the autonomic nervous system. We've all ridden the roller coaster, fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze. So there are things that everybody can do at home that can help their brain to create that neuroplasticity. The brain loves to learn new things. The brain loves novelty, sharp and engaging and funny and be able to focus. And I know how I'm going to do that. I'm going to turn my brain on to get my game on.
I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we're diving into the science of peak performance with an amazing author, an amazing doctor. Her name is Leigh Richardson. She is a brain health expert and the author of the breakthrough book, Turn Your Brain On to Get Your Game On: The How, What, Why to Peak Performance. In a world overloaded with distractions and stress, this is a powerful guide that shows us how to optimize our brains to supercharge our success, our focus, and our mental wellness. If you're looking to boost productivity, enhance resilience, and truly unlock your potential, this book is a must read, and this episode is a must watch. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put her in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her powerful book. The links are below this interview. And be sure to download the Spotlight Network TV app streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Logan, thank you so much for having me. Anytime I get to talk about the brain, I get excited. That's one thing that I can talk about 24/7.
Exactly. It seems like our brains are on overload nowadays. This is a big culprit. This is kind of overstimulation. It can be a great tool, but it also can like almost fire an ADHD response in our brains, it seems. Talk to us about the digital age and how it's a big distraction.
Well, it's interesting. The digital, it is a big tool, but it's our best friend and it's our worst enemy. And that's one thing, I touched on in the book was, and that was included more around screen time. But I have written a workbook to go with that book, and I have a whole chapter on how you can reclaim your relationship with technology. And we all have a relationship with technology. And sometimes, we don't realize that the amount of screen time that we're getting, it's affecting our emotions, our focus, and the relationships we have with our friend and family. And nothing puzzles me more than I walk into a restaurant and I see a family of four, and they're all sitting there looking at their phone.
I know.
And I'm like, and it's a kind of a challenge for me
It's
not
tough.
to
It's
go
become
over.
kind of a dual brain for us because you'll be having a conversation and then a point of contention will come up and like, let's Google it.
Yeah.
So it's really become part of us. So we do have to learn to unplug a little bit to use what's up here. Let's talk a little bit about your title, Turning on Your Brain. What does that actually mean?
Well, it's interesting because anybody that's written a book, you spent days thinking about what would be a title, what would catch somebody. And what I've noticed is I've been a clinician, I've been working in the brain health space since 2005. And people, the first step is to come in and do a consultation with me. And in a conversation back in 2005, those were lonely conversations because nobody, I would say, I sense some depression. No, no. Or I sense some anxiety. No, no. And I thought, we're so unaware of the negatives and the negative stigma that's around it. And I thought when I opened the Brain Performance Center in 2009, I said, I'm not using that term anymore. I'm talking brain health. And I got a lot more going in those conversations when I talk to brain health. And that's when it dawned on me, you really, if you think of the brain as an organ, just like your heart, and we all worry about how our heart performs and how our heart functions, but people really didn't stop and think about, how does my brain work? And I thought, if we can learn to turn our brain on, we'll get our game on. And that's what it's absolutely about. Everything you don't do, no matter how well you do it, it is all about what's going on in the brain. And Logan, the biggest challenge that I have faced is people think of the brain, oh, that's the brain. This is the body. They're not connected. This is one unit. They are very much connected. And people that Olympic athletes, they appreciate the importance of their brain and their body, the connection there. Um, so do performers, whether you're an actor or a musical performer, you understand the level that for you to be in the right spot and have your head in the right headspace, it's all got to be connected.
And there is such a powerful connection. As an actor, I'm telling you, if I made myself cry right now, there would be a physical response in my body. My heart would beat differently. My posture would be different. The same thing with smiling. I smile and I instantly feel good. So the brain body connection is obviously unlinkable. And I think it's great that you frame it as brain health as opposed to mental health, because there is such a stigma to mental health. Let's talk a little bit about what people often do when there is a brain health problem or a mental health problem, and that is they turn more and more to drugs. Not necessarily recreational drugs, but pharmaceuticals like SSRIs. Good idea, bad idea? Does it depend on the individual? Do you think they're overprescribed? I just gave you 5 questions there, but wanted to get your thoughts.
Well, thank you. And I have to be very honest, Logan. I have a natural bias against drugs, prescription drugs, because they've never really worked for me. So it's never been my first line of treatment. It's never been the first thing I turn to. Now, have I taken prescription drugs? Absolutely. Did my kids? Absolutely. But it wasn't just the first thing that I did. And I will be honest with you, the biggest barrier that I had when I founded this company in 2009, a lot of it was the medical doctors because they are trained in pharmacology. And 20 years ago, when all the new medicines were coming out and we were so hopeful, and we've learned the hard way, some of them work, some of them don't, some of them create side effects. And it's more, and I've seen that barrier from the medical profession really lower, because I think we've all had the realization that there are other things that we can do. And I talk about those in the book, to maybe not be the first thing that you do is you take a synthetic chemical.
Mm.
Maybe the first thing you do is you stop and you look at your lifestyle choices.
You have to figure out why you're sad. You have to figure out why you're anxious. Maybe there's a reason why you were sad. Maybe you endured a lot of trauma growing up. Maybe you're anxious because of the chaotic environment in which you were raised. Those are things that need to be addressed before we start numbing ourselves with drugs, right?
Well, Logan, there's four things that puts a brain in a dysregulated state. One is genetics, and we are now open to talking about that.
Mhm.
15 years ago, because of the stigma
Yeah.
and physical head trauma, anytime you hit your head, and we've learned this from the NFL, what you've changed the way things are wiring and firing. And that's how I got into the business. I had a son that got hit by a car, never lost consciousness. The third is emotional trauma. And unfortunately, we're all touched by emotional trauma. And the fourth is stress. And the pandemic introduced a whole new dimension to stress. And I think that in many ways, that trauma from being isolated and separated and losing our what we knew as our life, that changed how our subconscious deals with stress. And the subconscious, something you'll think about something and you'll think, oh, I'm getting nervous just thinking about that. I don't want to think about that. We'll beat it down. Guess what? it'll work its way right back to the top of your brain.
Yeah, yeah. I try to make appointments for stuff like that. If there's stuff that I have to deal with, I say, okay, I'm not going to deal with it now. It's bedtime. I'm actually going to address that issue tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. when my head's clear and I don't need to sleep. That's one thing I do. Another thing, if people are close to me and they sometimes have a problem for every solution, they see the glass empty half the time, always worried about what might happen. I say to them now, what if everything goes right? What if everything is perfect? What if everything is better than you planned? What if it exceeds your expectations? That's what so many people need. And I think it goes to your biofeedback and your neurofeedback techniques. So I'd like you to talk about them a little bit, about how we basically rewire our brains and how we rescript the scripts that were written for us in many cases by our parents.
Well, it's interesting because the way that the brain processes information is it turns it into a story. But the brain doesn't have necessarily have to have accurate information. Oh, I've been thinking about this and I've got a blank here. Oh, I'll just pull that out and stick it in. And so we start playing that story in our head. And many times, and we don't ever ask ourselves, is that really what happened? We just hear the story. And then if you get into coaching and counseling relationships, they will usually I will challenge that story. But with the neurofeedback and the biofeedback, it helps you to let go because what we're doing is we're doing two things. One, we're focusing on the communication between the brain and the body. It's the autonomic nervous system. We've all ridden the roller coaster. Fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze. And once that coaster starts going, it's hard to slow it down. But if you can increase the communication between the brain and the body, you can slow the roll. And one of the most important things to do is to create neuroplasticity in the brain. And that's something that we look at the Brain Performance Center. And that's something that everybody can work on at home. The brain loves to learn new things. The brain loves novelty. And anytime you can stretch yourself and learn new things, the brain, it's rewiring and it's learning adaptability. Oh, I could do that. And think about it. The brain's not fully developed until you're in your mid to late 20s. The very last part of the brain that develops is this prefrontal cortex, which we need by the time we're 13 for sure. And so that, the 30s are rocking. And then in the 40s, maybe you start to plateau some. And a lot of that's influenced by your lifestyle. What's your diet? What's your sleep? How do you deal with your stress? Do you turn to a recreational drug? Do you exercise? There's options. And I think, then by the time you get to be 50, maybe you'll start to have some cognitive impairment. Maybe not. By the time you're 60, maybe you'll have to face some fact that, can't find my keys. Oh, where's my phone? And a lot of times when that happens, people will say, well, I'm 60, I'm just getting old.
Yeah.
And to some degree, that is correct. A lot of people will accept it because of that. Don't accept it. Create neuroplasticity in your brain. If you like to cook, but you've never cooked Thai food, cook
Mm.
Thai food.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as every day you get up and you brush your teeth with your right hand, do it with your left hand.
Mm.
And when I was finishing up my dissertation, Logan, I was feeling I need to push my brain. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm right-handed. I'm no longer going to use my right hand for the mouse.
Mm.
I'm going to use my left hand. That was a lot harder than I ever thought it would be.
Yeah.
But it's making my brain think differently and react differently. And every part of your body integrates into your brain. Put your thumbs on top of your ears. That's your sensory motor strip, your homunculus. So there are things that everybody can do at home that can help their brain to create that neuroplasticity.
It's great advice across the board. I say be aware of cruise control. I think the doldrums of the 40s are based on people basically stuck in a rut. They're doing the same kind of work. They're not advancing their career as much. Their children are getting older. They're maybe not as stimulating. Keep on learning new things, keep on doing new things, and avoid those limiting beliefs like, I'm 60, what do you expect? No. Some people produce their best work at 60. I mean, if you look at Clint Eastwood, his best films came in his 60s, 70s, 80s, and now into his 90s because his advice was, I never let the old man in. And I think that's a great bit of advice. If you think you're old, you're old. If you think you can't do it, you can't. If you think you can do it, you just might be able to. I think that's very, very powerful advice. Let's talk a little bit about your business. It's the Brain Performance Institute. Tell us about that. I might have the
Oh,
name of it wrong.
well, no, I have the Brain Performance Institute, and that is where I work more on an organizational level, working with organizations to create psychological safety. And that doesn't mean you have to be nice to everybody. Psychological safety it's confusing as to what it does mean, but it means that everybody feels seen and heard and respected. And that doesn't mean that things always go your way, but it means that you're willing to be flexible and to listen to what your teammates have to say. And at their part of that is coaching and training and teaching some process skills, doing a little biofeedback, just one-on-one. And that's as simple as learning how to use your breath, use your breathing to calm yourself. And then at the Brain Performance Center, we work with individuals, we work with clients to help them. And mainly it's anxiety, depression, ADHD, and autism, but to get that brain into a regulated state without taking medication. Or perhaps too many people come with the goal to reduce their medication. So what we aim to do, it's so interesting because, I talked about, Logan, how I stopped using mental health in 2009 when I opened the Brain Performance Center. When I opened the Brain Performance Institute in 2021, I changed my language a little bit more. I
Mm.
went from brain health to brain capital because this is the biggest asset that you have. So many people think, oh, the biggest asset my company has is my technology, or it's my strategic plan. No, it's not. It's what you got going up here. And
Exactly.
for people to understand that and to lean into it. And that's where brain capital came from. Let's build our brain capital. And that's a term that's pretty common these days. And the new term is brain economics. So I think that as a society, we're starting to see that we need our brain. And not just on a cognitive level, but on an emotional level and on a social level to have resilience.
Absolutely. And there's all this talk nowadays about AI, and AI is a great tool, but never forget about RI, real intelligence, the intelligence we have up here, because we still are right now at least smarter than AI. It might be able to perform certain tasks that we can't do as quickly, but certainly we're in the driver's seat, and it's very, very interesting to express it as brain capital. I think that's a great way of framing what we have up here. This book, Turn Your Brain On to Get Your Game On, also has a workbook. Tell us about that. That makes it a little more interactive, right?
It does. And I put the workbook together after writing the book. I thought, this is great. And I had very kind people, this has helped me so much to understand what's going on. And then they would leave and I'd go, what are they going to do about it?
Yeah.
You know? And not everybody will come to the Brain Performance Center and do the work, but some will. So I thought, let's put together a tool that they can interact with and that it will help them to stop and reflect. And let's start with the most basic things. And that's the physical we mentioned earlier, the physical mental connection. And when you think about it, that's I know I exercise every day. And when I don't, I can be a little bit of a bear because my brain needs that. And that's what the brain needs, movement. And that's what gives me the freedom to think differently. So when you learn how your mind and your body interact, then you say, oh, that's stressing me out. Or you know what? That's probably because I haven't had anything to eat today. And that's something that I need to work on is, and I'll realize, why am I getting so grouchy? Oh, I haven't fed myself, you know? And
Exactly.
then you have to think about what influences your emotions. Because, and I, Logan, I do a check-in on a regular basis. Leigh, how's it going today? What do you
Mm,
need? Do you need to just stick your head outside and breathe some fresh air? Do you need to connect socially with somebody?
mm,
What's influencing my emotions? And at the same time, what's influencing my brain? Am I, all of a sudden at my problem solving skills, I'm thinking that's a problem. What can I do about it? And I keep asking the same question. And I realized, am I anxious or am I a little overwhelmed today because I was 20 minutes late getting here because of traffic?
mm,
And the biggest thing, Logan, it's what's in our environment. And that's where we started off. And we started off talking about the digital world that we live in. But it's more than that. I mean, I find when my office is clean, there's no
mm,
clutter. Everything is in place. I am a lot sharper. When I walk in and I'm looking for this or I can't find that, it's, I realize it brings me down and it interferes with my thinking. So there's all kinds of things that if we just, the workbook will help you do is to stop and look at what's going on in your space. And I'll give you some examples and ask you to reflect. How
mm,
is that impacting you on a daily basis? And then take it a step further. Okay, let's get a strategy in place
mm,
and let's implement that strategy. And there's always at the beginning of every chapter, there's you rate, you give yourself an assessment. And I always say, be honest. Nobody's going to see it but you. And I but be honest. And then 30 days later, come back and take that same assessment. And 60 days, come back and take that same assessment. Because that way you can measure the progress that you've made. And small steps, celebrate every
mm.
win. Celebrate every victory. You don't have to make a major change. One of the most amazing things to me is I've become involved with the neuroprotective diet. And it's amazing to me how much by changing one thing, as simple as, those are lifestyle choices. I'm never giving up my ice cream. Okay, but do you need 3 scoops?
All
How
right.
about how about you take 1 scoop and the difference that can make in your glucose and for people with diabetes. So celebrate every small step that you can take.
So all such great advice. You unpacked so much there. Let me get to some of it. I mean, I really agree with you as far as being aware of your routine. I know I need at least 8 hours of sleep. So I want to get to bed at a certain time. I'm only going to get deep sleep if I'm asleep by 10 o'clock at night. No alcohol, no caffeine for me. They don't agree with me. They feel good temporarily, and then they don't make my body feel as good as they should. So being aware of all this stuff is so important. The conversation and questions that you ask readers in your workbook, I think, are very profound because of this. We all have these conversations in our heads. Unfortunately, a lot of the conversations and questions are negative. So you're framing these in a very empowering way, and I think that's super important. And finally, celebrating your victories. So many people, by the time they achieve something, don't realize every step and hurdle that they've gone through to get there. They feel like they've deserved it. And they probably do by the time they get there. There are no overnight successes. The overnight success is what happens to somebody else. Everybody else earns it the hard way. In a blink of an eye, you got your doctorate, but you were the one burning the midnight oil and getting carpal tunnel working on that keypad. So you've unpacked a lot here. It's so important. How can people get their hands on this workbook in addition to your book? Both at Amazon, I presume?
They both are on Amazon. The workbook has just been really newly released, and I want to offer that as a special package for your listeners. So people that would like to get the workbook by itself or the workbook and the book together, watch the Brain Performance Center watch the Facebook page. We're going to have a big introduction there, or just it's as simple as call the office 214-329-9017 and inquire. Because I think that you put them together or you use them separately. However, whatever resonates with you, take action. Because Logan, the fastest growing population today is 85 and above. And I want to be there,
Yeah.
but I want to be there sharp and engaging and funny and be able to focus. And I know how I'm going to do that. I'm going to turn my brain on to get my game on.
Awesome. Awesome. And that's the name of the book, Turn Your Brain On to Get Your Game On, the how, what, why to peak performance in a world overloaded with distractions and stress. This is a powerful guide that reveals how to optimize your brain to supercharge your success, focus, and mental wellness. If you're looking to boost productivity, enhance resilience, or live a productive life into your 80s, 90s, and beyond, this is a book you won't want to miss. It's a complete game changer. Everything the doctor said today, I completely agree with. It's really concrete science, it's innovative science, and I think it'll spare you some heartache also if you're troubled right now with anxiety and depression and SSRIs aren't working for you. This book will help you have the tools to repower, to rework, and to rewire your brain. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate your time, your insight, and your wisdom. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time. This time until next time on Spotlight.